All right, the Democratic nominee for New York City mayor, Zohran Mamdani, he is, what do we know about him? He's a 33-year-old self-proclaimed Democratic socialist, and I think it's fair to say he certainly has become the darling of the left after he beat former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the primary last month. But Assemblyman from New York, Mamdani, he was actually in D.C. yesterday. He was meeting with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other Democrats. They met at the National Democratic Club. He's trying to build his coalition so that he can, obviously, he wants to be in the Gracie Mansion there in New York next year. But certainly, he is an individual who has a lot of questions floating all around him, probably not the least of which for some of us watching and listening right now is what is a Democratic socialist? And what do we know about Mamdani's background? Well, here with his thoughts is author and freelance columnist Larry Taunton. Larry, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always an honor to have you.
It's always good to be with you.
Okay, so for those who may not be tracking the mayor race in New York City or New York City's politics in general, catch us up a little bit on who is Zohran Mamdani, what's his background, and what are his views as a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist?
Well, what I'm going to say here is perhaps controversial, and I'm just giving you my own opinion here. But I think he's disguising who he really is. Mamdani gives the impression that he is a socialist, actually a communist, a hardcore communist, though they deny that that's actually what he is. But, you know, it's really my argument that he is first and foremost a Muslim. I mean, we do have him recorded, speaking of how it's his desire to bring more Muslims, into the country. And you see, the larger plan for Islam is that they have discovered that the path to power in America is through socialism. They look at London, Britain itself as a whole is really the model. You have Saqib Khan's, London there. He's a sort of a soft socialist, is the way that he packages himself. But they've actually, they're waging war on white people in particular, on the Christian faith in particular, free speech, while opening the floodgates to Muslims coming into that country. And the result of that is nothing short of, frightening. I was a student in London in the early 90s, and the way that country is now is it's been totally transformed by Islam. And that's the model here. And so I think that Muslims have realized that their path here isn't to come as open Muslims who desire to create a caliphate, but rather to come as socialists.
That's a great comparison and something I think that provides a wake-up call for everyone. What do we know about his father, Mahmoud Mamdani? And specifically what I'm thinking about is his anti-Israel views.
Well, I don't think we know, honestly, an awful lot about any of them. But what we do know is that he's a guy who has made a case for suicide bombing, that he sees it as a legitimate form of warfare. And that, again, takes me back to Islam, because, you see, this is actually quite consistent with what Islam is. It's quite consistent with the Quran. And you see, Muslims, something that Americans just simply do not understand, and having spent so much time, in the Middle East, as I have, in reporting on Islam, debating Muslims on Al Jazeera. I've debated them in Hyde Park, London, which is where the real radicals, hang out. I've debated them on CNN International. Islam holds that it's morally acceptable to lie if it advances the cause of Allah, if it advances the cause of Islam. And this is why I argue that he's not a socialist. He knows that the way to win particularly in New York and with millennials and Gen Zers, is through socialism. And so, no, they're not open about what their plan is here. And of course, his desire to create all of this, free housing and so forth. I would be willing to bet a substantial amount. I know this isn't what we do here, but that his plan is to fill that housing with Muslim immigrants. That is the goal. I mean, this is a guy who's also stated that it's his desire to increase taxes on white people. So now, while he's saying that, we're watching what's happening in Minneapolis, where we have a political candidate there who has stated very much the same thing. So you see, this is very much consistent with, say, someone like Ilhan Omar. I've always argued Ilhan Omar is not first and foremost a socialist. She is a fifth columnist. She is trying to advance Islam.
Absolutely. So what do you take of his win in this primary? What does it say about the Democratic Party?
Well, the Democrat Party my father was a lifelong Democrat. He died in 2006, and probably fairly typical of many Democrats. My father was, what was once called a Reagan Democrat. The last Democrat president he voted for was Jimmy Carter, and he lived to regret that. Meaning that this is not a Democrat Party that his generation would recognize at all. He loved his country, wasn't for open borders. I mean, that Democrat Party is dead. This is a radicalized Democrat Party that is seeking the annihilation. I used to say that it was the annihilation of borders and to flip red states into blue states. That's all part of it. But what their ultimate goal is the destruction of American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is real. And it was Obama who first, kind of stated this. And they know that the keystone that sits above the doorway of freedom around the world is the United States. And they know that the key to that, what undergirds it, is, of course, the Christian faith.
Right. Amazing. I wish we had more time. I look forward to having you on, Larry, some more to talk about this further. But thank you, Larry Taunton, author and freelance columnist. Great insight. We appreciate it very much. Appreciate you coming on.